We are live. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is Fantasy NBA 101. He is Bill. I am DWill. We are here telling you, helping you out, guiding you along the way to help you dominate your head-to-head leagues. And Bill, is it time to panic yet? We're 2.5 weeks into the season. Are you freaking out? What is going on? What I do? I drafted Joel Embiid with the second overall pick. And he's almost outside of the top 50. What do I do?
We need like a alarm. Bam, bam,
Yeah.
bam.
We need one of the big red lights to flash on the screen right here. So that's what we're discussing. Every single year it's going to happen. You're going to draft people and you are going to see them underperform. It's like without fail, somebody that you draft is not going to be living up to the standards that you hope they would. So when do you panic? When do you pull the trigger to try and move that person? What do you do to try and navigate it? The biggest thing is you have to know, all right, is this a fluke? Like, did I draft a first round player and now all of a sudden he's going to be 6th round value? The odds of that happening, barring injury, is very, very slim. So you want to be selective, right? We still want to win. We want to win our leagues. We want to dominate head-to-head leagues, but we have to keep our head on straight. We can't just, Karl Anthony Towns was a late first, early second round pick. He is around the top 40 this year. Let me see. I can pull it. I had it up earlier, but
37 on Basketball Monster.
Basketball Monster. So Embiid is 48 on Yahoo and Towns is 42. Both of these guys were first round value guys. They were taken. Embiid was early first. Towns was kind of mid late first. In some places I saw him go second. But you're not going to drop your first round pick. And a lot of formats, ESPN, Yahoo, they have don't drop lists. Like they will not allow you to drop a first round pick. So they're trying to, that's a warning sign. Hey, you shouldn't drop this guy. But what I want to focus on, and we mentioned a couple names there, but the biggest thing that I want you guys to take from this episode today is where is that line? Because everybody knows, even if you're brand new to fantasy, everybody knows you're not dropping a first round draft pick because he's underperforming. People are going to see that first round draft pick underperforming and they're going to throw stuff at you. And there's going to be enticing offers. There's going to be things that make you think, make you scratch your head. But for me, I cannot remember, I don't remember the last time that I traded, and I pretty much just don't trade a first round pick. It would have to be something pretty crazy in order for me to trade a first round pick. Will, where are you at with that? Do you trade a first round pick ever? Or is it something where whoever your first round pick is, you're holding on to them?
It just depends on the circumstance. A lot of times your first round pick, that's your favorite guy, favorite top guy. You want to hold on to him, see how it goes. But say you have a late pick in the first round and you really wanted one of those top 4 or 5 guys, and there's a way you could package something to get one of those guys, you may be interested in making a trade like that. Or like you said, underperforming guy, like you've mentioned Karl Anthony Towns. He's not a 4th round value, but I think he will drop in value from that first round because, Rudy Gobert is there. So if there's a way you could get a player that you feel is going to finish top 10 and you think Towns might finish 20 to 30, you can go for it there.
So, Jamie, I want to go ahead and, or maybe Jaime, if I'm mispronouncing your name, I apologize. We'll go with Jamie for this. Jamie asked in the chat, he says, I have first waiver priority. Should I use it on Jalen Suggs? If so, who do I drop? Jalen Smith, Isaiah Jackson, or Kelly Olynyk? 12-team 9-cat. For me, I prefer the 3 guys that you have on your roster over Jalen Suggs. Jalen Suggs does have upside, but he struggled a lot last year. And I just don't think that he gets to fantasy value. Isaiah Jackson is a guy that he may not have a ton of value right now, but he is somebody that is his value is going to increase as the year moves along. And if Indiana pulls the trigger on a Miles Turner trade, his value is going to skyrocket. And if that doesn't happen, Miles Turner misses time every single year. When that happens, Isaiah Jackson is going to be a guy that's going to be, top 50, possibly higher, and whenever it comes to per game stuff.
Yeah, I feel like if you think you need to take a type of a risk, like, my team is kind of good, but I want a high risk, high reward, you could go with Suggs because it's possible that he can take over that role and flourish, but it's still risky, and the guys you have are safe. I'm sure you're asking this question because you're tired of the safeness of it, but it's just something you have to weigh your options in. I think it's a little early to use that on Suggs. I would try to hold off because, like you said, what kind of value player do you want to wait for? Just a player that for sure is going to be a top 70 guy without a doubt.
Yeah, and that happens. We're talking about panicking on this episode, and I've mentioned this on previous episodes that we have done of this Fantasy NBA 101. Every single year, somebody has a player that has been a perennial top 75 guy, and they get frustrated with them, and then they drop them. I go back to a couple years ago, the Robert Covington thing. He came out of the gate shooting like 20% from the field, and then like the last 4 months of the season or whatever, he was like a top 30 fantasy player, just killing it. And a lot of people dropped him because he was really struggling early. So for me, if I have top waiver priority, I'm not spending that unless it's a guy that I have watched him finish inside the top 75 in fantasy. So we'll get back into you made a great point. I asked you if you ever trade your first round pick, and you said if you have an opportunity to go up and get one of those guys that are top 4 or 5 guy. Joel Embiid is a guy that is underperforming right now. And so some of it's kind of, he's missed some games here. Joel Embiid always misses games. We know that's going to happen. But he seemed like even when he was playing, there were times when they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure out, okay, is this going to be Harden's team? Is this going to be Embiid's team? It's Embiid's team, FYI. But they're trying to navigate that. And so using your first round pick to go and get another first rounder is fantastic. I rarely trade my first round pick, and I still stand on that, but I'm for sure not trading my first round pick unless I'm getting a first rounder back in return. And a lot of times, like, a 1-for-1 doesn't happen. And I don't tend to meet the cry. Like, I won't give up enough to move up. Like, if I've got a guy that's like hanging around the back end of the first round, I won't add enough to that guy to move up to get the top, 4 or 5 guy. So Will, when you have a guy, let's go. I'm going to go a little bit further down this list. I'm going to ask you a question first, so I got some time to navigate. But as you're navigating through your season and you have a guy, let's say you drafted a guy in round 6, how long of a leash do you have on that guy? Like, how much time do you give him before you consider dropping him?
Yeah, normally in a standard league, you're going to have 6 to 8 starting spots. So that 6th pick is very important. So that's kind of a player you want to hold on to because he should be a guaranteed starter. But the fact that he is a guaranteed starter also brings some urgency into the position. You can think of a guy right now like Patrick Williams. He started off slow. He's slowly starting to creep up into, okay, I think he'll be all right. He was much further than a 6th rounder, but that's just an example of you can't rush to get rid of a guy like that. And if you do want to do something, you can do maybe a package trade, but you can't drop guys like that. And I know you said earlier in the show, no one drops a first rounder. But this year, I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of crazy things going on. Some people are dropping first rounders. But Kawhi wasn't a first rounder. But, like, even experts are dropping Kawhi right now. And he was a 2nd or 3rd rounder. I guess the injury concerns are an issue. How do you feel about a player like Kawhi being dropped?
I think it's crazy. So for me, Kawhi never fell to a spot in any of my drafts where I was comfortable taking him because of the injury risk. But there's no chance I'm dropping him. You just eat
I
it.
agree.
You have to eat it because when Kawhi Leonard is healthy, he's a top 5 per game fantasy player. Is he going to be healthy? Are we going to have to deal with this injury management and everything that is going on with him throughout the rest of the season? I don't know. That is Josh Lloyd and Dan. I hear those guys say it pretty frequently. A guy is injury prone until he's not. Right?
Yeah.
You look at Porzingis is a guy that has injury issues every year. Kawhi Leonard is a guy that has injury issues every year. Damian Lillard was a pillar of consistency. He didn't miss time until last year. Then now, like there's injury concerns, and he's out this year with an injury. That's probably not going to be a long term thing. But in the same breath that a guy can be fully healthy and then suffer an injury and miss an extended period of time, a guy can face a lot of injuries and then find a way to stay healthy. And so that's something I know that the Clippers are going to be cautious with him moving forward. He's going to league like going into this season. I said I would be surprised if Kawhi Leonard played 50 games this year, but 50 games of Kawhi Leonard is better than a lot of these fantasy guys. It's better than I would say 85% of the guys that you're going to have on your fantasy roster. So for me, a guy that has first round upside, I'm not getting rid of him unless we get a for sure. Hey, this is a
Right.
torn Achilles or an ACL, and they're going to be out the remainder of the season. I'm not dropping them.
Well, that's one of the things with this episode and Don't Panic is, you're seeing a lot of news trickling out here, trickling out there. And I think it is causing people to panic. They're saying there's tendonitis, there's this, there's that. And not only with Kawhi, you hear a little news from here and there about other players, and it'll kind of scare you a little bit. But you just have to remember, it is a long season. You don't have to do anything that day, even though it seems like you may need to do it right away. You can hold off and, ride the turbulence for a little while and see how it goes.
Yeah, so I've got a guy here that I think is a great example, and we're mentioning names on this show, and these episodes are for, we want them to be evergreen, something that you can use every year. The biggest thing we want you to focus on is the position of where the draft, like where these guys are drafted. Franz Wagner is a guy that he was drafted different places, but middle of the draft, sixth, seventh round, right in that area. And currently on Yahoo, he is pretty far down the list. He is
162 on Monster.
He's at 160. And in the preseason, his ADP, it looks like he was around 70. So he's 90 spots below where he was drafted right now. And he is a guy that I'm not panicking on. So Jalen Smith has had some rough games here, but the opportunity is still going to be there. I'm not panicking on him. Jabari Smith, I think, is a guy that you buy low on. He's a rookie, so there's going to be some struggles in there. But you look at what he's doing with him shooting. Let me pull his, like, I just looked at Jabari's numbers and I don't
I think he's shooting like 30-some% from the field.
Yeah. So like it's something like where he's at and what he's shooting right now is the reason I'm not panicking. So he's currently 182nd on Yahoo and 9Cat, and he's shooting 30% from the field. That's going to come up. You look at the rest of his numbers: 10.6 rebounds. He's getting you 1.2 blocks, low turnovers, and he's shooting 90% from the free throw line. That field goal percentage may not get up into the upper 40s like you would like to see, but he's going to get closer to that 40% mark. And when he goes from 30 to 40%, he's going to be a guy that climbs inside the top 100 pretty easily. Jalen Smith is an unknown, but I still have confidence. Just I don't think that Rick Carlisle, I don't think that the Pacers are giving up on him. I think that, navigating his role. It's a new team. There's a lot of new pieces. Trying to figure out who's going to do what is some of the stuff that is playing into what's going on with him.
Yeah, you made a good point about, percentages. Sometimes with rankings, you'll see a guy ranked really low. It's like, man, I need to get a guy ranked higher. But when you think about it with these category leagues, missing a lot of threes, missing a lot of free throws, and just field goal percentage in general can drop you in your rankings very quickly, like 20, 30 spots, just like that. And if you go on a hot streak of 10 games, just hitting your shots, hitting your free throws, hitting your three-pointer, you will jump dramatically. So especially early on the season, we are 1/8 through the season. So not that many games have been played. So each game is affecting these guys' rankings a lot right now. Once we get to the midway point of the season, around in there, they won't fluctuate as much. But, you can each game, guys are fluctuating 10 or so spots because of their shooting percentages and things like that. So that's another reason why you should not panic this early.
Yeah, and guys like Jabari coming out of college, I think he was around
like 43%.
Yeah, 43, 44% in college. And in his rookie season, I don't expect that to be the case. I think that he's going to be a little bit below that. But also, he was the guy in college. Like, he was the top option. And so having guys that can create shots for him, I think it's going to get him some better looks. He's definitely going to shoot better than 30%. So definitely not panicking on that.
Yeah, that's another note I had. Rookies in general, Jabari's a rookie, but rookies in general take time to develop. For the most part, we have Paolo Banchero, Benedict Mathurin killing it right now, but they're an exception. Normally rookies get off to a slow start. So even when they do get going and start getting into gear, they'll still go through slumps even then. So you have to ride the wave with rookies. You kind of never really want too many rookies on your team because of those ups and downs through the season. But, you will find your gems with Paolo, Benedict. But I do think Jabari is a gem as well if you can hold off through these turbulent times.
Yeah, it's all about, we talk on this show on multiple occasions about getting value. And so you look at guys and you look at the rest of their numbers. Jabari's fan. So his points as his field goal percentage goes up, he's going to go from 11 points a game, and you add 10% to that. So instead of making 3 out of 10, now he's making 4 out of 10. That adds a couple more points. So that's going to bring him up the board. And so every little thing that happens with his percentages, it's going to just slowly climb him up the board. And it's not, he's not a guy that I was drafted. I think I was trying to get him around the 100 or 110 mark. So I expected him to have some struggles, and I'm okay leaving him on my bench until he gets to the point where he's not killing your field goal percentage. And head to head, like I do a lot of roto leagues. And so in head to head leagues, I'm still playing Jabari right now. And there's times when it really hurts my field goal percentage, and I do end up losing that category. But some of the others, so like the defensive stats, the free throw percentage, the other things that he's doing, it's enough for me to leave him in my lineup.
And a lot of times you can get too focused on your team and not seeing the bigger picture. You have one guy that's an eyesore on your team, one or two. I got to get these guys off of my team, find somebody in the waivers that's doing better instantly for right now. But if you look around in your league, every team has 1, 2, or 3 guys that are underperforming, that are a cancer to their team as well. So that's another reason not to panic. If you have 6 or 7 of those guys, then you need to do something. But for the most part, everyone's having those same issues, and you can hold off, especially if you know that they should be doing better in the future.
Yeah, this is like talking about the rookies here is fantastic for when you draft a rookie, we're talking about not panicking on your fantasy team. When you draft a rookie, 9 times out of 10, a rookie is not going to come out of the gate and just kill it. You get an occasional rookie here or there where from day one they come in and they're lighting the world on fire. They're doing everything that you want them to do. But even as well as Banchero is playing and as well as Ben Mathurin is playing, both of those guys are still outside the top 100. And I know that sounds crazy. Ben Mathurin is averaging 20 points a game, Banchero is averaging like what's he?
22 or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, and 8. So Banchero is 22, 8, and 4 right now, and he's still outside of the top 100. He's 123 on Yahoo. So you're gonna have, when you take a rookie, know that there's going to be growing pains. If you've been following Sports Ethos for a while back when we were hoop ball, Dan Bespress has the Dan Bespress old man squad. Dan pretty much does not deal with rookies. He waits. He targets older guys, more guys that have been around, that he knows what they're going to do. And he does that because it's a safer play. Or I can't speak for Dan, but I know I do that because it's a safer play. There's a couple leagues that I got a later draft pick this year. So I did take some younger guys that I wouldn't normally take. But where I was drafting at, I had to take some risk because the guys that I play with are really, really good at fantasy. So if I don't take risk and hit on some of those risks, I'm not going to win this league. So you just have to navigate that based off of who you're playing and where you're at. I tend to ask questions, right? So if I have a guy on my roster, and we were talking about Franz Wagner just a little bit, he's a second year guy. He's a guy that finished well last year, but he's struggling a little bit early this season, and he was way down the list. I think he was in he was 160, I believe, is where Franz was. Let me make sure. Yeah, he's at 160 right now, and he's a guy that you were taking in the 6th round, 6th, 7th round. And this is not a guy, this is a starter. When you're looking at Will was talking about how many positions you have in your starting lineup. When you're looking at your starting lineup, if you have a guy that is in your starting lineup and he pretty much just stays there and you're not rotating him out at all, that is not a guy that you're going to drop. That's not, it's, I'm trying to think of how I want to word this. You don't want to overreact to a very short sample size.
Right.
We are less than 10 games into the season right now, and you don't want to panic. The average fantasy, if you're doing roto, you're running the entire season, and head to head, your season's a little bit shorter, but you've got plenty of weeks here to make up this gap. So if you start off pretty rough and head to head, you're not going to get buried just because your first 3 or 4 weeks are bad. You just have to, okay, I'm 4 weeks into the season. Some things have gone wrong. What do I need to do to make adjustments? And it's small value. You look for small steps. A lot of times you want to take a home run swing, and that's not necessarily the best way to do it. You want to find a guy. If you're trying to navigate this panic season, you want to find a guy like Franz Wagner that is underperforming and be like, okay, I think that Franz Wagner is going to be a top 60 fantasy player. I've got a guy right now that's performing at a top 40 rate, but I feel like that's going to fall off because somebody's coming back and they're going to be healthy. That's going to change how much usage they have. I think that they're just playing over their head. Whatever the reasoning is, you want to find a guy that is overperforming and go out and try to get somebody like a Franz Wagner, or it doesn't, name is not relevant. A guy that is underperforming, go out and get him cheaper than what he is probably going to finish the end of the season. And if you do that in enough, if you do that enough times, that's going to propel you into the upper end of your league. I remember last season I made a couple trades, and it was to get people that were underperforming. They started off bad, and I knew the guy was panicking because he's a guy that likes to be in the beginning of, he likes to be at the top of the league. He wants to be number one in the standings all year long. I knew he was freaking out, and so I sent him a couple of offers. My team was terrible early, and I barely made. We had four teams get into the playoffs. I make these trades, and I barely make it into the playoffs. But by the time we got to the playoffs, those guys that I traded for were playing at the clip that they were expected to play at, and my team dominated in the playoffs. And so these small increments, making your team stronger, finding guys that are underperforming and sending those offers out to get them is how you're going to help propel your team over the top.
Yeah, that's key because, we get a lot of questions on this guy's underperforming. Should I cut him? This guy's underperforming. Should I cut him? Always try to trade first. Don't just go instant reaction. They suck. I gotta drop them to get this hot new item on the waiver wire. If you just can't hold them anymore, try to trade first. A lot of times, like the question we had from Jamie earlier, he has 3 underperforming guys. You can package maybe 2 of those for one solid guy.
I wouldn't say Kelly Olynyk is underperforming. I think you're kind of selling Kelly O short there. He's playing pretty well right now.
Well, just in general, he has 3 guys he's looking to possibly replace a guy with. You can package 2 of those guys for a more secure player because, with Olynyk, he is playing good, but will Walker Kessler eventually take over the role when Utah starts tanking? We don't know. But, look to package your underperforming guys as well, because those guys that you think are underperforming were still names that were highly regarded coming into the draft. And players that you play with that were in the draft with you still remember those names. And it's like, man, I wanted Jalen Smith. I missed out on him. So you may be looking at him as down, but they're not on their team. So they're not noticing he's kind of underperforming. They remember that name from the draft. I would like him in a trade. You know what I'm saying? So I always think about trading first. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes you have players in your league that just let trades sit there. Sometimes you have guys like David. You send him a really nice trade. He just rejects it instantly. I mean, it just happens.
That's what I do, man. It's a fine, like it's a slippery slope. You've got to be careful when you have guys that are underperforming. For me, I try to wait on them as long as I can. The sample size makes a difference.
Right.
And that's something everybody has a different tolerance for that. That's something that you have to develop on your own. Right. For me, the first month of the season, I'm not freaking out too much. I'm trying to take my overperforming guys and move them for guys that are underperforming who I believe are going to get back to that level that we want to see them at. And I try not to, if you're selling low, like if you've got a guy that's underperforming, you're probably not going to get his true value in return. So be very cautious. Yeah. Trey is not playing well right now. Like he's a first round guy. And I think that he is around 60 whenever you're looking at the ranks right now. And it's because of field goal percentage. He's shooting something stupid like 27% from the field. That's going to get better. Mm-hmm. So look back on the history of the guys that you have on your team. If they're a rookie, you have to know when you drafted them that there's going to be some growing pains. There's going to be the speed of the game is different. The offense is new to them. There's a lot of stuff that they have to pick up. So give the rookies a little more of a leash if you drafted them on your team. If you're going for the safer role, try to get more established guys in the draft rather than taking rookies. But sometimes if you hit on that rookie, that can be the difference in winning your league or not.
100%. Another thing, I know we're about to close out real quick. Another reason people panic a lot is injuries. A lot of times you may draft 1 or 2 guys coming into the season that are injured, like a Robert Williams or whatever, and the rest of your team's healthy. You think everything's fine. But that first week of the season, first 10 games, multiple players have been through the woodworks with injuries, and then your team is riddled with injuries. And you're like, what do I do? Just remember, nagging injuries, day-to-day injuries, it may seem like it's ruining your whole season, but each day feels like a week. But if they're injured that 1 week, it's okay. There's still plenty of more weeks. You just have to hold off. You can't cut these guys. You can't trade these guys right away. Hold off. It'll be all right.
Yeah, look at that bigger picture. Look at the fact that, okay, this is week 3 of however many weeks your league runs. And as long you got to make the playoffs. Making the playoffs is the biggest thing. And once you make the playoffs, then that's when you want your team performing. That's when you are like, all right, my team has got to be in peak shape, because if they're not, I'm going to be in trouble. And just don't hit that button. Don't. I'm 7 weeks, but all right. I'm the first 3 weeks into the season, and I'm 0-3. Yeah, that's pretty rough, but how much are you losing by? Who's injured on your roster? Are your guys just underperforming, or did you not execute your plan on the draft? There's a lot of factors that go into it. So have confidence in yourself and in the draft and the team that you drafted. Right now, I'm looking up my top head-to-head league. We play 21 weeks and then playoffs. So you can theoretically, the first 8 weeks of the season, you can start off 0-8 and
Don't
run
do
the
that,
table.
though. Don't do
You
that.
know, you don't want to do that, but
But
you
you
can
could.
lose the first 8 weeks
Yeah.
and come back and be fine. So the first, specifically within the first month of the season, you have to keep your hand off of that panic button. Do not, under any circumstances, drop a guy that has been a perennial top 75 player. Give them some time. If you absolutely, I'm not even going to say if you absolutely, because I just don't do it. Will approaches it differently than I do, and that's okay, because there's a lot of different strategies that work. Will has won plenty of money in fantasy. I've won plenty of money in fantasy. So obviously his strategy has worked for him. My strategy has worked for me. But I can tell you a strategy that is going to cause you to lose money, and that's dropping top 75 players and letting other good teams pick them up and make them stronger. That's going to win them money. That's not what we're here for. We're here for you to win your league. So save that waiver priority. Wait till somebody panics on a perennial top 75 guy, snatch him up off of the waivers, and win your league. Will, you got anything else before we get out of here, man?
Great episode, man. But yeah, that waiver wire is so tempting. I know it's hard to sit it out because it's like the guy is like, oh, I gotta get this guy, but it'll work out. It'll work out.
Yeah, Jamie appreciates the questions, man. We typically don't go live with this show, but we're recording on a night. We usually do the show on Sunday, but you can get us our Twitter handle. He is at William is Bill. I'm at NBA DWill. We're happy to answer questions on Twitter anytime, man. So if you're over there, come find us. Obviously, follow Dan, Ethos Fantasy BK. Dan is at Dan Besbris, DANBSBRIS. Thanks
Check
for
out our
tuning in.
shows,
Yeah. Yeah, Will does the All Rookie podcast. I am the host of the Sports Ethos Grizzlies podcast, which I'm fixing to record an episode of that as soon as we're done. You guys take care. We'll see you next time.
Peace.